Welcome to How to Get Over Your Ex, a podcast on getting over your ex without it just taking time. I'm your host, breakup coach Dorothy. Let's turn your pain into power and your heartbreak into happy. Amazing. Hey, Vikki. So, Bravehearts, I have Vikki here. She is one of my besties and one of my coach colleagues that lives far away overseas. I'm like, we've met in person. So we met in person at one of like the business masterminds, I think, for the life coach school, which has been so great. But I haven't seen you in person in like years.
Since that moment, since that trip.
Yeah. So I'm going to let Vikki introduce herself, but she is an amazing example of what's possible, not only in the coach industry, but also when it comes to time. And today we're going to talk a lot about time because I'm always talking about how getting over your ex doesn't take time. It literally has nothing to do with it. So we're going to expand on that today with Vikki, which is going to be super fun. But Vikki, why don't you take a moment to introduce yourself and tell people like what you do, who you are, all of that.
Yeah, sure. Hi, love. Okay, so I am Vikki Louise. I'm calling in currently from France, which is cool. And I call myself the reformed hustler turned time hacker. I really help like busy high achievers, busy hustlers slow down and stop doing all the things so that they can achieve more in less time with more time off and all that good stuff.
I love it. I love it. And you have something called Time Hackers.
Yeah, so I have a coaching program called Time Hackers where I basically teach people to take time out of the success equation. And this is what we're going to speak about today, I'm sure. But really, for all of you listening, I know it's something that comes up in heartbreak so much like, oh, it just takes time. And like Dorothy was saying, like for me in my business, when I launched, I was thinking like things will take time and then things moved very fast. And I was like, oh, it was never about time. What was it about? And we'll break that down and discuss it today for all of you, how it applies to heartbreak and getting over your ex. But I just think so often in society, we use the word time when things did used to take time, right? Like if we look to our past, like travel from France to the US used to take a lot of time. Communicating, even like with someone in two different countries, used to be like paper and pen, and it used to take a lot of time. Travel to our own center of town used to take a lot of time. And we've just continued that language as the world has evolved. And now we can do, I mean, right now we're reaching thousands of people all over the world in seconds, milliseconds. So time no longer has anything to do with our ability to reach people, just like as an example.
I love that. And even I'm just going to bring up what just happened.
Yes.
So Vikki and I communicate a lot via Instagram, and I had posted a post that was written a while ago, again, about time. I talk about it a lot. And she saw it and she just reached out to me on Instagram and was like, hey, I know we were talking about doing a podcast episode about this. Do you want to? And I was like, yes, that's actually so great. That perfect timing because I need to do all of July's podcast. And yeah, that sounds great. And we looked at the calendar and I was like, what about Friday? And she's like, oh, I forgot. I'm going to the beach on Friday, this, that, and the other. And then I take Thursdays off and today's a Wednesday. So she was like, I know this is kind of crazy or kind of wild, but like I'm available right now. And here we are, like minutes later, recording this podcast episode. And just, it's so cool. I love it. I love it. Okay. So I want to talk about, let's kind of start. I want to start how my actualization of getting over my ex had nothing to do with time. And then we can kind of go from there. Yeah. So what happened for me is when I was going through heartbreak, I Googled how to get over your ex, how to forgive and let go. And a lot of times Google was like, make sure you give your heart space and time to heal. And then I would ask people advice, and even unsolicited advice. People would just be like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, it's just going to take some time. Don't worry about it, but it's just going to take some time for you to heal. And I was like, I had also heard that like weird saying where people would be like, oh, if you dated that person for 7 years, it's going to take half the time that you were with that person. So I was like, fuck. 3.5 years. I don't have 3.5 years. I don't want to do this for 3.5 years. What are you talking about? So I was down to do all the things, and I did all the things that Google told me to do. And I traveled, I stayed busy. I did all of it. I was down for all of it because I was like, anything that can speed this up, let's do it. But then when I learned all of the tools that we teach and thought work and all of the stuff that the brave hearts are used to talking about when it comes to healing your heart in a very different way, everything happened in a single moment. Like I remember the moment I was in the shower listening to a podcast on forgiveness by Brooke Castillo at the Life Coach School. And all of a sudden it clicked. Like the thought change in my head went from clearly he never loved me to he did the best that he could. And like it just all of a sudden, all of it clicked. And then that's when I realized it literally just took one moment for me to truly be over my ex. And so I talk about that all the time with my brave hearts here on the podcast, on Instagram, when I'm coaching people. I have no doubt in my mind that all of them will get over their ex. It doesn't have to take time. It doesn't matter how long it's been. It's literally going to take one perspective shift. And I remember too, when I first graduated life coach school training, we used to have this like Slack channel full of coaches. And I remember like, I would write stuff about like my specific niche, which is like breakups. And I wish I could remember who said this, but I remember being like, well, it only took me a moment to get over my ex, but like my program can't be just like a week long. And I'm thinking maybe my program needs to be 6 months long instead of 3 months long, because what if it takes someone longer? And the person was like, if it took you a moment, like who's to say it's not going to take them a moment? And I like, my mind exploded and I was like, this is it. This is exactly it. It totally can take a moment and it doesn't even have to take 3 months. And then after I implemented the program, all of a sudden people were getting over their ex in 4 weeks, in 1 week, in like ridiculous amounts of time. And I'm just like, time literally has nothing to do with it. Just like it blew my mind. So I guess, what are your thoughts about that? Tell me any thoughts that you have about that, and tell me if you've ever experienced like a time shift when it comes to like relationships or heartbreak or anything like that you can think of.
Yeah, I mean, I think yes to all of that. Time is like the last thing it takes. Like how I teach it in Time Hackers, like the 3 steps to achieving anything are actually managing our mind, managing our brain, and really just like how we describe ourselves, if we were to really what we believe about ourselves, and then making quick decisions and implementing them, and then being willing to fail. So for your brave hearts listening, it's like, are you willing to do it a bit messy and be vulnerable? Like this, honestly, the sooner you are willing to feel vulnerable and to be hurt is like the moment where, like for me, that's just like always been the aha. And same for me in terms of like, if I think about my exes or even like my husband, like we met and I moved countries and moved into a studio apartment to be with him after like knowing him for 2 months, then leaving him for 3 months. Like, you know, the whole process, none of it takes time. It really takes, like I say, I think, you know, managing your mind, making those quick decisions and being willing to be hurt and be vulnerable. And I think so often when we are saying, what's so damaging about saying it takes time is it leaves people disempowered with nothing to do but just wait and let time, like time has all the responsibility and all the credit.
All of the control, you feel out of control when you're saying it's just going to take time.
Yes, at a time where you already feel out of control, or like the wind has been, I don't know the saying, like the wind has gone from beneath your wings, like, and then people are like, I guess like now you just have to sit and wait and someone's gonna tap on your head with a magic wand and you're gonna feel great. So you just like, what do I do? How can I make decisions for my life when time is gonna just one day wake up and be like, that's it, it's over, instead of you getting to decide, I'm all in to do whatever it takes to get over my ex. And in that process, that might mean reading 7 books. That might mean going traveling somewhere. That might mean, and should mean joining Dorothy's program. Like, what is that going to mean? And am I all in to do all of that instead of what's so comfortable for our brain, which is like, what if we do all that and then it doesn't work? And then there's something wrong with us. That's what your brain is really afraid of. And that's what time gives it. When we say it gives its time, all you are doing is avoiding failing and avoiding feeling hurt. Like, really, and like, what do you think about that? The moment you're willing to feel hurt and be vulnerable.
Oh my gosh, 100%. When I talk about the 3 steps to getting over your ex, you have to decide to get over that ex. You have to commit to becoming the person who's over your ex, right? And then you've got to practice that day in and day out. You've got to practice that commitment. And so it's really fascinating to me when you start tying in time with that, because deciding something and then committing and then practicing, none of that requires any time. A decision, again, takes a moment. It takes one moment to make that decision. And I love the way you put it, right? Is like, I'm going to decide and commit to doing anything I need to get over my ex. It's just happening. And I think a lot of times people put off that decision because they think that getting over their ex means never being with that person. And so they have this scary story about what getting over their ex actually means, when in reality, what you're doing is you're learning how to not be at the effect of who's in your life or not in your life for your emotional well-being, but also for the results that you want to go out and create in your life. So I think there's that component too.
Yes.
What are your thoughts about, because one of the biggest sayings that I talk, which is also really cool, someone got a tattoo of this on them and I like died. It was so good. So one of the sayings that I use a lot in the podcast with the Bravehearts is, it's always happening to you, or it's always happening for you, not to you. And I feel like that ties hand in hand with time, because when I thought about the whole construct of time when it comes to heartbreak, we always are looking at things retrospectively to provide evidence for our present and our future, right? And so a lot of times people can say that it just takes time to heal because they've allowed that time to go by, and then they're looking backwards being like, oh, well, you see, like, I didn't get that job because of I was supposed to get this other job, or it didn't work out with this man because I was supposed to meet this person. And when we're looking retrospectively at that, we can say, oh, it just took time, when in reality, it was never time in the first place. It was always a perspective and a thought shift. And so when it comes to the idea of it's always happening for you, not to you, when you truly live in that belief, you will never be at the effect of time, because you're always believing that whatever is happening in the present moment is happening for the highest good of you and all people. Does that make sense?
Yes. And I love what it does is it detaches you from the now and commits you to like your whole life, your whole future. And our brain is so obsessed with our past and super obsessed with the present. And the more we do that, the more we're like, I need to see the evidence now. The more we're clinging to like, I just have to know that they've not moved on, or they're not dating someone else. They're not like, I just need to know that now. The more we are clinging to that, it's like we are building up that friction and that resistance that is going to slow us down, instead of trusting that your future self is like inevitable and so there, which is the way you accelerate to become them and move faster than the speed of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that. I love that. So another thing too that was coming up when you were talking earlier is, I haven't really talked about this on the podcast yet, so I'm kind of excited. What do you feel like? Because I know that there are societal like norms around how much time should go by between a breakup and a new partner. And this was something that like blew my mind when I was going through my breakup. We had a 7-year relationship. We broke up, and then he started dating someone openly, like on Facebook, a month after the breakup. And I was beside myself. I was like, are you kidding me? And I remember like they posted a Facebook profile photo, and people were like, oh my gosh, like amazing. And like, congrats and like all this stuff. And then half the people that were posting thought it was me. And so it was just like, I was so angry and so mad about that. And it really, I had to get to the place where I was like, oh, you know what? Like there are no rules. There are no breakup rules. There are no rules about how long you're supposed to wait. And then as soon as I started learning all this stuff about time and how time had nothing to do with healing, I was like, oh my gosh, there are literally like, of course he can date someone a month after. But tell me, I guess, what are your opinions about that and time? And like, because you mentioned like, oh, wow, I met my husband and I moved in with him 2 months later, because I think a lot of people have a lot of hesitation of doing something too soon or something like that. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah. So I think, yeah, when it comes to like an actual breakup is a moment, it's a decision implemented at that point in time. But it doesn't mean both people have gone through the same emotional journey. And at that point, it's like, I think of it like an orgasm, like not both people orgasm together all the time, right?
That's a
So,
good analogy. Yeah.
so we end a relationship and we're thinking the other person feels the emotions that we feel and has the experiences that we do, and they just don't. And that comparison is going to again slow us down and take away from our healing and our experience, because we're focused on their experience, and their experience should be different. And to even bring it back to like what you just said, like how does that happen for you? Because I have an ex I was like on and off with for years because both of us didn't have anyone else. And if I could go back in time, I would be like 100% he should like go meet someone else immediately, and then we can just like save. So it's so funny that we think there's like a better way to break up and a better timeline post breakup, when really like having that superpower question of like, how is this happening for me? Like, oh, there's like the hard line. I get to cut the whole like fantasizing back and forthing messiness. And if that is your story, for anyone listening, that was like my story. So that's also, you'll also still get over it. It's fine. But yeah, it just is interesting that we live by these expectations and these timeline expectations, when like I guarantee if you were to ask 10 people the timeline expectations, they would still all be different. We're like, everybody thinks this way. Everybody thinks that you should wait 6 months. No, they really don't. Like everyone literally thinks differently. And that's a beautiful thing about the world. And as for like then moving into a relationship, because I think this is something really important for your brave hearts to hear as well. It's like when you heal, when you really get over your ex, like, I don't know about you, but for me, like I always had like a bit of like a high. Like it was when I was super connected to myself, and like that was the prime time to meet someone when I actually almost didn't want to. And you know, you're showing up in the world as the highest version of yourself, you're available to meet other people as the highest version of themselves. Things can move quickly, especially when you go through a breakup and you do something like coaching as you go through it. So you've used the experience to get to know yourself so much more. Like for anyone listening, like your next relationship isn't as far away as your brain might be telling you that it is. Like it's not just about just getting over your ex, it's like preparing you for the relationship that you deserve, if that's what you want, which by the way, you also don't have to want that, because the ultimate relationship is the one with yourself, right?
So good.
But yeah, I can tell you for me, like looking back, I'm like, of course we moved in so quickly. Like I was so connected to myself at that point in time. I'd quit finance, I'd like gone traveling, I was living life fully on my own terms. And then like, poof, there he is, like 2 weeks into my summer vacation. My hot girl summer gone wrong. And here we are. I call him the worst one night stand. That's what he is.
That's hilarious. He just stuck around. He's now always there.
Yeah. So it can be quick as well.
Yeah, I love that. I love everything you just said about that, because that is exactly what happened for me when my ex moved on quickly. It was like I always say it's the biggest gift that he gave me, was because then I didn't have the back and forth, and it was like, okay, this is for real done. I have to do anything and everything in my power to go out and create that life by myself so that no one can ever take it away. I literally wrote him an email, and that line is in it. And it like makes me like laugh and kind of giggle, because I was just like, oh my God, there's baby breakup coach Dorothy being born. Like, go get it, girl. But yeah, totally understand and think that as well. And then I love the concept that you just kind of talked about, where it's like, yeah, once you truly get over your ex and you're like living that beautiful, amazing, epic life that I call a beautiful Sunday, it's so much easier to find that cherry on top because you are living such a high vibe life and you're like so obsessed with it's also just very attractive. It's attractive to other people and it's attractive to yourself. I totally get that. And I love that. I just recently started dating someone and it's like, I feel like that happened. Like everything moved really quickly. And it was because I just knew exactly what I wanted and it just felt so aligned.
Yeah, and you know exactly like what you want. I think about Runaway Bride with Julia Roberts, where she's like always having the eggs how they want, and it's like you know, super cute, and then she like figures out how she wants them herself, I think, in the end. But it's that whole thing of like, or you can like, this can be the catalyst for figuring out the eggs how you want them, and then you go into the next relationship and you have eggs the way you want them for life.
Oh, I love this conversation and I love you so freaking much. Is there anything else about time that you wanted to talk about?
I would just say to people to just like know that like it's okay that other people still think that, right? Like we don't have to argue and debate with other people that don't want to hear it. Like this is really, you're listening to this for your journey, for your story, for your experience. I mean, feel free to share this episode with anyone that you think it will benefit. But sometimes like this, we're not sharing this so that you can like debate with everyone and win those debates, but really just for you to create freedom away from like the societal expectations or the time rules and boundaries that someone else or some movie or some book put on you. Like this is really a gift for you, so really receive it for yourself.
Oh, I love that. Such goodness. Thank you so much, Vikki, for joining us. I truly appreciate it. And I know that the Bravehearts are going to like love and devour this episode. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you're loving the How to Get Over Your Ex podcast and you want to learn how to get over your ex in 3 months or less to build a life better than the one you thought you had with your ex, I would like to personally invite you to my next group course where we take everything you've learned here on the podcast and apply it to your life. Come check it out at www.lifecoachdorothy.com.